YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back. And we're on to week 11 for the college football season. I got my against the spread picks for some of the top games in week 11. Best bets, score predictions for NFL college football on our Patreon. We have full NFL coverage here, so join us for that. Like, subscribe, turn notifications on, follow our Twitter. There's a link down below for anything that you may be looking for here. But like we always look at this leaderboard, let's take a look at it. Mike Latt still in first. A couple people not too far behind. Seems like the same people here taking control. Impressive numbers, like always. What do we got for this week's games here? Michigan, Penn State. There's a lot of good games this week. Michigan, Penn State. A lot on the line here for the Big Ten. Michigan trying to stay in that race to get that title game. Obviously, if they continue to win, an Ohio State game would be major if they could pull that off. This is a tough one. Michigan minus 2.5. Penn State's kind of been struggling the second half of the season. I'm feeling Penn State, though. Definitely not one I would touch, in terms of putting money on it, but Penn State getting the points. I think they might win this game. Michigan hasn't had too many tough opponents, except for Michigan State. Kind of blew the game there. And Michigan State struggles with Purdue, so are these teams not as good as we thought they were, or did Michigan State just slip up one week? Penn State, they could be a little sneaky, so it's a different matchup than Michigan's seen. I'm going to take Penn State plus 2.5. I think they can win that game, actually. Oklahoma and Baylor, a few weeks ago, maybe the cans this week for Oklahoma. I was thinking they're going to lose to Baylor a couple weeks. Kind of what I was thinking. Baylor's playing really good football. Oklahoma inconsistent, even though they do feel a lot better with Caleb Williams. But now I'm totally different on that. I'm not thinking that anymore. Oklahoma continues to improve. They had a bye week last week. Baylor gets upset to TCU. I was not expecting that. That was a shocker. A team that Oklahoma handled with, ease. Every week's different. I think Oklahoma win this game by a touchdown. Definitely not one I would touch because it is a different matchup. Maybe it's a tougher matchup for Oklahoma than the other games they have played. I think they're going to win by a touchdown, somewhere between 7 and 10 points. But again, a couple weeks ago, I was thinking Baylor could definitely win that game. Purdue, I can't believe that 19.5. 19.5 is the spread. I know Purdue got beat up pretty bad to Wisconsin. It's a totally different matchup. Wisconsin's red hot right now, too, but not that they're as good as Ohio State. Not even close, really. Maybe they're getting there because they're playing a lot better. It's a totally different matchup for Purdue, though. This line is shocking, but there's been some shocking lines that end up being right. Vegas ended up being kind of right with those lines, I felt like. So there's been some surprises this year, basically. 19.5 is too much. I think Purdue's offense looks very solid. Looks like one of the better offenses in the Big Ten right now. They're giving those teams problems. We saw against Iowa, big-time win, Michigan State. Ohio State's got a little, their defense is getting better. It's definitely going to be more vulnerable than a team like Michigan State. But Ohio State has a lot more offense to keep up with them. So that's why Ohio State's favored, obviously. I just don't see the room for Ohio State leading by that much. Purdue would have to make an insane amount of mistakes on offense. I think it's going to be a really high-scoring game. Plus 19.5 is, in my opinion, absurd. So I think Purdue has a better shot to win than lose by that amount. I don't know. Not that I'm picking them to win, but 19.5, I like that for Purdue. Minnesota, Iowa. Two teams I just can't figure out. Minnesota upset by Illinois last week. Illinois can be a little sneaky. We've seen them beat Penn State. Iowa's been struggling. It's a tough one. Iowa, yeah, this is a tough one here. I'll take the points. Give me Minnesota. It's 6.5. Iowa probably wins the game, but it's going to be within 3 probably. It's a random game to have on here. Marshall and UAB at Marshall. Marshall minus 5.5. I'm going to go Marshall wins by a touchdown. Marshall on a little bit of a streak. A little more consistent than UAB. Touchdown win for Marshall. That's an odd one to be on here. I like A&M here. I liked Ole Miss all day against Liberty. I thought that was a free one last week. A&M is a tough matchup. It's a very similar matchup to Auburn for Ole Miss. They're going to see some defense here that can actually slow them down. Not going to stop them completely, but A&M's defense is really good. They're going to slow them, a really good offense in the Rebels down. And A&M will be able to score on Ole Miss's defense. I love the matchup for A&M. A&M is playing very, very well. Since the Alabama game, starting with that game, take away the record, everyone's records. A&M looks like a top-tier team, elite team in college football right now. So it's a huge game. I like A&M minus 1.5. In Ole Miss makes it a little tricky, but I like A&M minus 1.5 there. That's a good matchup for them. Notre Dame, Virginia. Notre Dame minus 4.5. That's a tricky matchup for Notre Dame. I guess it's similar to North Carolina, which was a close game. Notre Dame kind of had control, but North Carolina was kind of keeping up with them. It ended up being a pretty close game. It's a very similar matchup to that, actually. But this one's going to be in Virginia, looking like a primetime ABC game. So could that give them some momentum? Virginia's offense is explosive. Defense struggling, though. It's going to be on Notre Dame. It feels like Notre Dame offensively, there's times where they kind of gotten hot. And there's times where they go cold. I feel like it's on themselves. They kind of beat themselves. So we know they can move the ball on Virginia's defense. This is going to be similar to that North Carolina game. Virginia's defense is just too weak. I think Notre Dame wins by 7. It's a team. I feel like they should win by more than that. But in Virginia, that explosive offense probably keeps it close. I'll take Notre Dame wins by about 7. NC State, Wake Forest. It's a really good line at 3.5. 3 would feel a lot better, but I'm still going to take Wake Forest. They just match up better against these types of teams, more of the defensive teams here in the ACC. See them struggle with North Carolina, and they outplayed North Carolina for a big portion of that game anyways. But, in those types of games where it's the opposing team against Wake Forest has offense like North Carolina, it's almost like a flip of a coin there. It's just who has the ball last. Basically, it's not really how it went, but they can keep up with each other scoring. Anybody can win. I think NC State's gotten some offense going. I just don't think it's the same matchup. I think Wake Forest can win by, somewhere between. That's why it's tricky because I could see Wake Forest only win by 3, but I think it'll be closer to the touchdown, but 7 points there. So I'll take Wake Forest. Nevada, San Diego State, another one that's tough. That's at 3.5 because I would love Nevada at 3. I'm still going to take them. Carson Strong, big game. They're going to put points on the board, have those explosive plays. Can San Diego State match that? They don't really have a lot of things going downfield, but they're a pretty damn good team. Only 1 loss. I'll take Nevada. Again, it's kind of like that last one. Somewhere in between 3 and 7 points, 3 and 10 points maybe for this one. I think they win by. I'm leaning towards they win by around a touchdown. Oregon minus 14.5. Washington State. It's another one I wouldn't touch. That 14.5 line's good. I can see Oregon winning by just 2 scores. But I can see them winning by over 20 as well. Oregon may have figured something out in the second half of that last week's game against Washington. I'm going to take Oregon here. They win by around 20. It's definitely not one I would touch. Out of all these ones, Notre Dame looks good at first glance, but that could be a trap game for them. I like A&M. I do. It's in Ole Miss. That makes it interesting. 19.5 is just too many points in my opinion. I don't know there for Purdue against Ohio State. I think Penn State can win. These lines are great because if it was 3, I'd feel a lot better because they could lose, obviously, by that field goal. But Penn State realistically could win the game. So that's a decent one as well. But a lot of good games here this week, a lot on the line, especially in the Big Ten, it feels like. A lot on the line there. SEC, it's a big one. I really like the way A&M's playing. But, excited for this week here. Let me know your guys' thoughts on this week's games. We're here every single week with this video. And we got all kinds of NFL content here, so check it out. Join us, like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Recent videos down in the comments along with our Twitter. Make sure you go to that, follow it. We much appreciate it. It's going to do it, though. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Goodbye.